Coming up on Arirang News, America's top envoy on North Korea issues, Stephen Biegun, meets in Seoul with South Korea's new national security advisor. They agree to continue working to restart talks with Pyongyang, but no message for the North from Biegun this time. President Moon Jae-in says he's putting South Korea on a path to lead the world in the parts and materials industry and lessen its dependence on imports. The government lays out a plan to achieve that. And South Korea reports another 50 cases of the coronavirus. The clusters are now mostly outside of the capital area, the city of Gwangju having the highest number. It's 5:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The U.S. top negotiator on North Korea, Stephen Biegun, stopped by South Korea's presidential office this morning for talks with President Moon's newly appointed national security advisor. The two agreed on the need to get dialogue going again between Pyongyang and Washington and promised to continue coordinating between South Korea and the U.S. Kim Min-ji reports.
South Korea's national security advisor Seo Hoon has called on the U.S. to continue its efforts to resume dialogue with North Korea. He met with the visiting U.S. appointment for North Korea, Stephen Biegun, at the presidential office for 70 minutes on Thursday. Biegun stressed the importance of resuming dialogue and vowed close coordination with South Korea on the matter. The two officials also exchanged their latest assessments on North Korea and discussed ways to speed up the peace process. They also agreed on the need to swiftly conclude their defense cost-sharing agreement. Biegun's trip to Seoul, his first in 7 months, drew a lot of attention, given that it came amid a stalemate in Korean Peninsula affairs. North Korea has cut off communication channels with South Korea and recently blew up the two sides' joint liaison office. Pyongyang has also said that it's not interested in talks with Washington. After a meeting Wednesday with Seoul's top foreign ministry officials, Biegun said the U.S. strongly supports inter-Korean cooperation and that he's ready to resume negotiations with the North at any time. Biegun now heads to Japan to meet with officials there. Although there was no new message for North Korea on Thursday, eyes will be on whether Pyongyang and Washington can move closer toward dialogue ahead of the U.S. presidential election. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
New satellite images suggest North Korea's nuclear program could be active at a previously undeclared facility. The images were analyzed by researchers at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. Speaking to CNN, one of the researchers, Jeffrey Lewis, said the facility has all of the signatures of a nuclear facility, including a security perimeter, on-site housing, and an underground facility. Responding to the news, South Korea's defense ministry said it would not comment on the results of research by a private organization, but they're closely monitoring the facility. Cases of COVID-19 in South Korea continue to rise outside of the capital region, especially in the southwestern city of Gwangju, which today reported 15 cases. Choi Jung-yoon has the details.
South Korea reported 15 new cases of COVID-19 on Thursday, amid a spike in cases outside of the capital area. Out of 28 local transmissions, the hardest hit region was the southwestern city of Gwangju, reporting 15 cases in just one day, whereas 4 new cases in Seoul, 1 in Gyeonggi-do province, and 6 in Daejeon were confirmed. Gwangju has now recorded a total of 144 cases since the outbreak first began. And more than 100 of those cases have been recorded in the last 2 weeks. The sudden spike in cases started with an outbreak related to door-to-door sales companies, and it has since led to some 8 clusters, including a religious temple and some travel groups. Among the new cases, 4 came from a private academy, and 2 each from a church, a nursing home, and a sauna. Further tracing is being conducted to find where the other 5 cases came from. One of the cases in the city is a 12-month-old infant who contracted the virus along with his family. This is the first incident of a child infection in Gwangju. As infections in other regions have hit gyms and apartments, health authorities have warned there's no safe place and people should keep in mind that they could be infected at any time. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
A year since Japan imposed export curbs on South Korea, the Moon administration has laid out a new set of measures to develop the country's own capacity in materials, parts, and equipment. Speaking at an SK Hynix factory in Incheon on Thursday, President Moon vowed to steer the local parts and materials sector toward what he called a Korean road.
우리는 일본과 다른 길을 걸을 것입니다. 대한민국은 위기를 오히려 기회로 삼아 글로벌 첨단 소재 부품 장비 강국으로 도약해 갈 것입니다. 그와 함께 글로벌 공급망의 안정에 기여하며 국제사회와 협력해 갈 것입니다. 이것이 우리가 가고자 하는 한국의 길입니다.
President Moon said the government has now shifted its protective policies to ones aimed at taking a leap forward in the industry. He said that just as K-quarantine has become a global role model, he said he hopes Korea can lead the world in the parts industry and help revitalize the economy. Also, while it works to reduce its dependence on Japanese materials, South Korea is going to work to raise the country's competitiveness in terms of the global value chain. The Trade Ministry said today that it's increasing the number of items to be managed under this goal from 100 to 338. These include items used for the big three sectors, namely semiconductors, biotech, and future cars. It's also going to inject around $4.2 billion into developing new growth engines. And to help in that development and to reduce costs, it'll introduce a new data platform. Companies from Korea and abroad will also be able to take advantage of a new region set up in the country, offering tax benefits and less red tape. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Se-won, Professor of Economics at Ewha Women's University. Professor Kim, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Devin.
Well, U.S. stocks were up overnight on strength in the big tech companies. Despite the surge in coronavirus cases, the Nasdaq is at yet another all-time high. What's the story in the global markets?
U.S. market is rising continuously over the last 2 weeks, which reflects investors' strong confidence on nearing economic recovery. Particularly, U.S. market's momentum is led by 4 high-tech corporations of Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, and Amazon. As a result, in yesterday's market, Nasdaq increased by 1.4%, and Dow Jones Industrial also increased by 0.7%. At the same time, Shanghai market also had a straight rise over 2 weeks, but it is true that fears on too fast stock market increase is growing together.
Well, Korean stocks today seem to take their cue from Wall Street. The Kospi and the Kosdaq strongly higher. Tell us about the local market.
Domestic market has a decent positive return for today in both of Kospi and Kosdaq. This rise is affected by U.S. high-tech's great performance yesterday. Kosdaq increased by 0.9% today, and this big rise is led by Kakao and Naver-like high-tech companies. Kospi also increased by 0.4% today.
Well, now with the U.S. having opened its economy back up a bit in the past couple of months, demand for oil is back up. The price of gold, though considered a safe haven, also continuing to rise. What's going on here?
International oil price stayed at $30 per barrel level after outbreak of coronavirus. And that price decrease was further accelerated by oil-producing countries' excess supply of oil. But U.S. gas demand is steadily increasing as U.S. economy reopened. That made international oil price higher yesterday. Western Texas Intermediate increase up to $40.90 per barrel, or 0.7% increase in a single day. Gold price is also increasing quickly. The price of the gold increased over $1,815 per ounce. We know that gold is regarded as the safest asset in the market. So higher gold price indicates there is still fears on second pandemic and collapse of the stock market.
Well, back here in Korea, we see that in May, the number of low-income people increased by 100,000. That's defined as those living on less than half the median income, but also depending on other factors like household size. But tell us about that statistic. It seems likely it'll rise as this goes on.
Right. About 2 million people are receiving government's minimum subsistence support as of May. But as you said, the increase of the number of recipients of this program is almost the same as last year, even with catastrophic coronavirus shock. I think government emergency cash-out program mitigated the rise of this program's recipients. But since we can't do the cash-out program over and over again, there should be something more tailored supporting program on this low-income group.
Got it. Well, the pandemic's impact on the economy has, of course, affected many people's lives. Young people in Korea are relocating to the capital to look for work. In March and April, the number was twice what it was a year earlier. What effect will this influx have on the economy, and what can be done to deal with it?
Young regional workers increasing move to Seoul and actually Gyeonggi metropolitan area is something we experienced in the past. Two economic crises of 1997 and 2008. Basically, it represents local economies are more affected by coronavirus crisis. Actually, except agriculture and fisheries, local economies are more based on service industries like restaurant, hotel, sightseeing, and so on. So young workers who live in local area are more suffering from coronavirus compared to that of the young people who live in metropolitan area. Government can provide regional economic boost-up programs in the third supplementary budget program. That will be effective way to mitigate this problem.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Students in the U.S. have had to learn at home now for several months. Many, including President Trump, think, though, that classes need to start again in person this autumn. In fact, if they stay closed, Trump is threatening to cut off federal funding. Kim Yo-sun reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump is pressuring state governors to reopen schools this fall despite a continuous spike in the number of COVID-19 cases across the country.
So we're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools, to get them open. And it's very important. It's very important for our country. It's very important for the well-being of the student and the parents. So we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on open your schools in the fall.
President Trump took to Twitter Wednesday to threaten to cut off federal funding to schools that choose not to open for in-person classes this fall. While U.S. school districts are mostly funded by their respective state budgets, he's referring to a portion of the federal budget that's allocated to fund schools nationwide. He also explained that many countries like Germany, Denmark, and Norway have successfully reopened schools with no major issues despite the pandemic. The U.S. CDC also stressed that detailed quarantine guidelines for schools, including social distancing and body temperature screening, will be rolled out next week. President Trump's call to reopen schools comes as U.S. immigration officials announced this week their plans to bar visas for international students who are studying in online-only programs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In response, Harvard University and MIT have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration in an attempt to block the plan. Harvard University said Wednesday that the government's move has been designed to pressure schools to open their on-campus classes this fall without regard for the health and safety of students and faculty members. The question of reopening schools has become an acute one for tens of millions of parents and children across the U.S. following months of remote learning. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.